took and took until it even stole their minds.
All I want is to sleep. Please, someone, just let me sleep.
Using the screwdriver like a crowbar, Lucas pried his new teeth out of his head.
This is Lago de Locura, the lake of insanity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Dr. Polly Vorta.
Polite applause rippled in the audience. Polly stepped out from the dark recesses of the wings and into the light of the stage. As she walked toward the podium at centre stage, Professor Catherine Melrose, her announcer, patted her on the shoulder and mouthed, "Good luck," before leaving the way Polly had come. Standing under the hot spotlight, Polly took a moment before speaking. She smiled into the full auditorium and felt tall and confident. Polly was very proud of her talents at public speaking. It was a skill many of her peers lacked, almost all of whom were gathered before her.
"I hope you all enjoyed your lunch," she said, "and that you got a chance to look around at the visitors' centre. I've been here before myself, and it really is a beautiful place to visit."
She smiled again. Personal details like that made the audience more receptive to her. Polly knew all the tricks for winning an audience.
"Some of you may know me from my CPD seminar at last year's conference. And for those of you who don't, you're in luck, because I'll be running it again tomorrow. Right now, however, I'll be a lot less technical and share with you an extraordinary anecdote. One that extends from Middlesex, here in England, to the Peruvian Andes and centres around this."
Polly reached to the podium on her left and picked up a remote control. She clicked the remote, and the image of the conference logo projected onto the large backdrop behind her changed to the first slide of her presentation. The image elicited a smattering of oohs and ahs from the audience. It was hard for Polly to suppress a smug little chuckle.
"This," she announced, "is Lago de Locura."
Polly turned to look up at what the audience could see. Projected above her was the side of a grand mountain. The photo resembled a masterful oil painting, with brushstrokes of ochre rock face and highlights of green, lush grass. At the centre of the image, nestled within the rock, was a lake. The water was a bright, clear turquoise along the shore, and slowly darkened to an emerald green at its heart.
"For those in the audience who don't speak Spanish,"
Polly explained,
"that means the Lake of Insanity. I'm sure you'll agree with me that it's not a name that fits such a gorgeous place. The only thing that seems insane to me is how hard it is to reach. To take a paddle in Lago de Locura, you'd have to make your way about 4,000 feet up the side of the Tucuhuasi mountain in the Huancavelica region of Peru. That's a little too far for my liking. I'm more of a sunbathing on the beach with my Kindle sort of girl."
A little laugh from the audience. Polly didn't mind that it wasn't bigger. The quieter the audience was, the more she had them hooked.
"This lake may not be my preferred holiday destination, but it was a passion for one man, who some of you may recognise."
Polly clicked the remote again, and Lago de Locura was replaced by a young man's selfie from Instagram.
"Does anyone recognise Lucas Jennings? I think I see some people nodding. Have you ever read his blog? It's really something wonderful, isn't it?"
Lucas's picture smiled down on the auditorium. In the Instagram post, his face was both weathered and full of youth. His skin had a warm tan and deep, Happy crow's feet spread from the corners of his eyes. His hair was a light brown, bleached almost blonde by long exposure to the sun.
Lucas is best known as a travel blogger,
Polly explained.
His blog is focused most specifically on diving and wild swimming. Lucas has travelled the world to post his stories. He's explored coral reefs off the coast of Australia and swam underneath 10 inches of ice in Norway. But after seeing this lake,
Polly switched back to the picture of the mountain.
Lucas was smitten. Lago de la Cura became his Everest, his white whale. For 3 years, from 2012 to 2015, Lucas researched and planned and spoke to every travel agent he could, trying to find this lake and how he could get there. After searching for years, what Lucas ultimately found was a madcap journey of chartered planes, off-road driving, kayaking and mountain climbing, as well as a lot of warnings. You don't call it the Lake of Insanity for no reason. Every time Lucas encountered someone who knew about the lake, they'd do their best to dissuade him. Even some of his fans were trying to stop him. I've got a quick video here that Lucas has allowed me to use from his Instagram account.
Polly advanced the presentation again, and a video began to play. Lucas now appeared in motion on the backdrop. He was holding the camera up to his face with his left hand and packing a large duffel bag with his right.
Hey guys,
Lucas said, not looking at the camera.
I'm making a quick video for you all because I don't really have time to write a blog post tonight and I wanted to speak to everyone.
Lucas stopped packing and looked at the camera. The humour that had filled his eyes in his selfie was absent now.
Honestly, I'm not happy I'm having to make this video, but I guess I need to remind some of you what this blog is about and what our community is about.
He paused and looked away from the camera. After a moment, he returned to packing his duffel, aggressively throwing items inside.
Tonight,
He continued.
I'm getting ready because in about
He looked at his watch.
7 hours, Josie and I are boarding the first of our 2 flights to reach Tama. Now, most of you know how important this trip is to me and how long I've been planning it. It's taken years to track down a route to the Lago de la Cura, and it's finally happening. I should be really excited about this evening.
Lucas looked back to the camera.
But in the last 2 hours, there's been, 40 comments?
Lucas seemed to be asking someone off camera. Polly could just hear a small voice on the video say,
43 comments. That was Josie, by the way. 43 comments trying to stop me from going. Now really, what's that about? We're supposed to support each other here, not bring each other down. We're supposed to be #CanDo here, but where's all that gone tonight?
Lucas held his head in his hand for a moment. Then he suddenly lurched away from the bag he was packing, moving so fast the camera footage became an unrecognisable blur. When the image eventually cleared, Lucas was marching through a hall in his house, growling.
Oh, just show you.
Lucas stopped marching at a series of framed photos on a beige wall. Each one showed a different body of water in glossy photo print.
Here, look.
He said, drawing the camera in closer to the photos.
This one here, that's the Devil's Cauldron. That one there was the Widowmaker. This,
Lucas slapped his finger down on one of the frames.
This one here was called the Pit of Despair. The actual Pit of Despair. Some of these are rivers, right? And lakes and reservoirs that I've been in didn't even have plants in them because nothing can live in them. And I went to them and I swam in them all and none of you were trying to stop me then.
Lucas turned the camera back around on himself. Behind him, the nervous figure of Josie could be seen peering at him from the end of the hall.
We're supposed to be Hashtag can do.
Lucas told the camera, wagging his finger along with the words.
I don't have time for this hate that you're bringing. Let's see a bit less of that tonight, okay?
The video ended, leaving Lucas's frowning face frozen on the backdrop. His index finger, raised over his head, gave him the look of a stern schoolteacher. Polly let the auditorium remain in silence for a second or two before she spoke.
Not one to be put off easily, she said. You heard his little catchphrase in that video. Hashtag can do. It might be more appropriate to say hashtag jolly well will do. So, Lucas and Josie boarded their flight, landed at Francisco Cale Airport in Peru, and began the sometimes perilous but always exciting journey to the Lake of Insanity. If you happened to follow Lucas on Instagram at the time, you were really seeing the best the app had to offer. Polly proceeded to flash a series of photos on the backdrop. Misty mountain ranges appeared, followed by long romantic stretches of dirt road. Sometimes the photos featured only a breathtaking landscape, other times beautiful, smiling Peruvians. And, on occasion, Lucas himself was in frame. His beaming face was a world away from the frustrated man in the video Polly had just shown. And finally,
Polly made the audience wait for the last image.
mission accomplished.
Lucas appeared on the backdrop, breaking through the surface of brilliant green water. The photo had caught him mid-backstroke. One arm pointed toward the sky, trailing a great, shining arc of water behind it. His lips were parted, baring his teeth in an ecstatic grin.
Lucas stepped into the waters of Lago de la Cura and found nothing but cool, empty depths and a lot of gypsum stones. His local guides didn't join him in his little dip, and even Josie, a woman who had supported all of her husband's endeavours, stayed out of the water because she didn't want to take the chance that the stories her guides had been telling her on the way there were true. But when Lucas swam back to shore, he was happy and accomplished and was experiencing no negative side effects, other than a little shivering from the cold water. In fact,
she said frankly,
swimming in the Lake of Insanity was disappointingly uneventful. Disappointing for my story, I mean. It certainly wasn't for Lucas. The journey back home to the UK was also very straightforward by all accounts. Other than a week spent on the more traditional tourist pastimes in Peru, it was totally uneventful. So, as I work my way to my point, and I assure you, I do have a point, I think it's time I told you how Lago de la Cura got its ominous name.
Polly clicked the remote, moving her presentation onto a stunning image of ancient ruined buildings, shrouded by a thick forest.
Peru is one of the cradles of humanity. More than 5,000 years ago, the area was home to the Norte Chico, one of the oldest known civilizations in the world. Very little is known for certain about the Norte Chico. There's almost no records of their culture that survived long enough to be found by archaeologists. The things we do know come from the deep links between the Norte Chico and the Incan society that later developed in the same area. Of those few insights we have, our Lago de la Cura is a shining point of clarity. The Norte Chico were very specific about it.
Polly switched the projection to a photo of an ancient sandstone carving. A woman's face, with a wide, straight nose and eyes as big as saucers, was engraved in the worn stone. She wore a large crown, shaped like the rising sun, and her earlobes were stretched by heavy earrings.
This beautiful woman is Mamacocha. She's the mother of lakes and rivers, and she fills the world with water. To the ancient people of Peru, she was a loving bringer of life And like all mothers, Mama Kocha gave life unconditionally. From the most radiant fish in the river to the ugliest worm in the mud. But the Norte Chico told a story about a time when that unconditional love brought a monster into the world. Historians disagree if that monster had a father, or if the new child was born of an immaculate conception after Mama Kocha suffered a terrible loss. What they do agree on is that while this child was given all the same love as every other creature in the water, it could give no love itself. It came into the world with only the ability to take. Mama Kocha tried to be a good mother and gave her new child the same life as all her children. But this baby took too much from its siblings. It took and took until it even stole their minds. Anything that shared its water, even human beings, were driven mad. It was so bad they'd stop eating, and eventually they starved to death. So many lives were lost to this new baby. Mama Kocha had to do something. But it was still her baby. Even if it didn't love her or her family, she still loved it. So Mama Kocha gave the baby its own lake, high up on a mountain, where it was safe and the world was safe from it.
Polly pressed the remote. Lago de la Cura was projected yet again. Polly was a little uncertain with her words. She didn't know if this was a good idea.
Can I ask for a little audience participation? Please, put your hand up if you're worried about Lucas, after hearing that story.
Nothing happened. Polly's breath caught in her throat. That was a misstep. She'd gone too far. Then a hand went up in the front row, and one in the third row, and suddenly hands were coming up all over like weeds. Polly nodded. Her breath returned.
It does colour your opinion a little, doesn't it? Even when we know it's just a story. Well, checking back in with Lucas, he was simply carrying on with his regular life. His star was continuing to rise online, and he was now looking for his next wild swimming adventure. What was a little different was Lucas had started adding a new subject to his regular content, something he called the noise. I think it's best that Lucas explains himself.
Polly played another video. Lucas was alone on camera, sitting in the driver's seat of his parked car.
Hey guys,
Lucas said, waving to the camera.
I'm just sitting in the car park, about to see a specialist about my hearing. Don't worry, I'm not going deaf, but my GP thinks I might have tinnitus. So I think...
Lucas stopped himself from talking and took a deep breath in.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, started noticing this noise at night when I was sleeping. It was kind of like a scratching or a scraping noise. Josie couldn't hear it, but it was there, and we assumed it was mice at first, or something in the walls at least. We had a couple of people out to look at the walls and couldn't find anything. Definitely nothing in the bedroom walls. I even had the bed frame checked for woodworm or termites or something, but there's none of that either. So after the noise kept going for a few weeks, I realised that it's nothing to do with the house. I can hear it everywhere I go. If it's quiet, I started noticing that during our yoga sessions that the scratching kept going. So I'm pretty sure it's something to do with me. That's why I'm here.
Lucas picked up the camera and turned it around, showing the view through his car windscreen. Directly in front of the car, nestled between two bushes, was a blue NHS sign. The sign identified Lucas's location as St Alphege Healthcare. Lucas continued talking off camera.
And basically just here to rule out tinnitus. I don't think it's that. I mean, this isn't even what tinnitus sounds like. It's like a high-pitched, like, ee noise. Not scratching.
Lucas turned the camera back to him.
No.
He said, wagging his finger.
No, I think this is the sound. Well, I looked it up, and there are millions of people who can hear the sound, right? Not everyone can, but it's always there. And you can't record it, you can just hear it.
Lucas was quiet for a moment, slowly nodding.
Yeah, there it is. I can hear it now. Little scratching noises. Scritch, scritch, scritch.
The video ended abruptly.
The sound,
Polly announced.
is a recognised phenomena, and very little is known about it. However, the information we do have suggests that, just like tinnitus, the sound doesn't actually make the same noise as Lucas was describing. Those who experience the sound have described it sounding more like a diesel car engine that someone has left running, not an incessant scratching. Lucas didn't receive a diagnosis for tinnitus and had to live with the scratching noise for the next 4 months. Looking at his social media accounts, you can see the parade of solutions Lucas tried.
Polly cycled the presentation through a series of Instagram posts. In each, Lucas was smiling and holding some new gadget. Each was captioned something like, "Thanks to the great guys at bettersleep.org for sending me this. Here's hoping." With each new post, Lucas's face sagged. His smile was more stretched and joyless. The dark rings under his eyes grew deeper. Even his brilliant white teeth seemed to stop sparkling like they used to.
The noise was taking a significant toll on Lucas. You can see his health deteriorating just in those posts, and it was starting to affect his career. Take a look at this live video he recorded in his 3rd month of living with the noise.
The video began with a loud rattling and blurred, flashing images as Lucas fumbled with his phone before pointing the camera at himself. The image was very dark and grainy. Lucas's face was only lit by the glowing screen of the phone he was recording on. From what little the camera showed, he was in some state of undress, his chest bare.
Tomorrow,
Lucas began, his teeth gritted.
I'm supposed to post a sponsored video about Calm, this sleep app on your phone. But this thing,
Lucas shook the phone, blurring the image.
this fucking thing is useless. All I want is to sleep. Please, someone just let me sleep.
Lucas made a sudden movement, and the image on the video turned completely black. All that was left was the audio, a frantic rattling, and suddenly a loud crack. The conference audience jumped at the sound. The video showed a brief glimpse of light before it returned to black, and another crack burst through the auditorium speakers. Somewhere behind the noise, 2 voices could be heard. One was Lucas, grunting and moaning. The other was a woman's. She was shouting,
Stop! Stop it!
Suddenly the picture was lit up again, as if someone turned on the lights. The audience had a brief glimpse of a bedside dresser, before the camera hurtled towards it, and the video ended with a final great crack.
Lucas destroyed his phone,
Polly said plainly.
Josie was scared. It wasn't the first time he'd acted like this, and they separated. Requests for sponsored posts stopped coming. Like all good stories, Lucas had to go through his darkest moments before he could come to the light. But not to worry. Just a week later, Lucas was to find his hero.
Polly smirked and clicked the remote again.
In me.
The next slide showed Polly and Lucas stood together. Polly was beaming, dressed in blue scrubs with her long hair tied into a high bun. Lucas looked just as exhausted, if not worse, than in the videos Polly had just played. His eyes were sunk deep into his face and stained bright pink, like he'd been awake all night crying. They were standing in a dental surgery. Behind them was an olive green dental chair.
Something I failed to mention is that I've known Lucas personally for a number of years. He's been a patient at Edgewater Dental since before I bought the practice in 2009. A week after the incident you just watched, Lucas came in for his annual checkup. We caught up during his appointment, and Lucas was more than eager to tell me about his experiences with the noise. Lucas told me he'd even had to get a friend to drive him to the practice. The sound was so debilitating. I was taken aback, and I didn't think I could do anything to help him. Until I took his x-rays.
Polly had never heard a crowd gasp the way her audience did when she showed the next slide. The projected image displayed 2 x-rays, each aside of Lucas's mouth. At the centre of each tooth was a deep, black void.
One hell of a picture to show to a room filled with dentists, huh?
Polly smiled wryly.
What you're seeing is not an error, although we did think it might have been at first, but this is just a regular bite-wing radiograph. And yes, that is what you think it is. Every tooth is hollow. Perhaps what was most extraordinary to me was that Lucas's teeth weren't causing him pain. He was shocked to say the least when I explained to him he had a head full of empty teeth. He had experienced no discomfort in his teeth or gums, and my visual inspection hadn't shown any sign of caries or missing enamel. One thing that I can always say about Lucas is that he takes his oral health very seriously. You're probably eager to know what I did when I saw these x-rays. Well, I can tell you I was taken aback and immediately excused myself to consult with my associates. They were pretty shocked as well, but we talked through our options and agreed that some urgent, and you could say drastic, measures needed to be taken. If Lucas had felt no pain, it suggested that something had managed to rot away all the dentine in his mouth, including the root pulp in every tooth. Whatever was doing this could have serious consequences for the rest of his body. I talked with Lucas, advised him to make an emergency appointment with his GP, and asked if he would consent to an emergency extraction of one of his teeth. None of them were healthy enough to stay in his mouth much longer, so removing one immediately for investigation did not pose much risk. Lucas consented, and we proceeded with the extraction. Here,
Polly switched the projection,
is a picture of the tooth I extracted. By all appearances, it's a perfectly healthy premolar, other than this small hole in the enamel here, just above the root and below the line of the gum.
Polly took a laser pointer from the podium on stage and directed the audience to the tiny cavity.
So, in order to see what's going on, I decided to cut it open. One of my associates, Raj Breach Tangari, filmed the cutting for me. I will warn you, what we find inside is a bit stomach churning.
The video played. It showed Polly's hands in blue latex gloves, holding a small silver grinding tool. Lucas's extracted tooth was clamped into a vise on a pastel blue worktop.
Okay, we are recording,
said a man's voice with a thick Indian accent. Polly's voice then came from the video.
Okay, this is the hollow tooth, extracted from a patient early this afternoon. We're just now about to try and cut it open to see what's happened here.
The grinding tool started whirring, and any other sound was drowned out. Polly's hands pressed the tool bit into the clamped tooth, and the sound increased in pitch. Polly didn't take long before she drew the tool away from the tooth and ended the whirring.
with just the enamel layer.
The Polly in the video explained.
It really hasn't taken long to make this weak enough. I think we could just pry the rest apart.
Polly loosened the clamp and plucked out the tooth with a pair of tweezers, laying it on a paper towel on top of the work counter. Then, with a pair of forceps and a periodontal scaler, she started working at the line she had cut into the tooth. Polly started to say,
Poking around here, it almost feels like there's...
But she stopped abruptly. She squealed and dropped her tools with a clatter, her hands disappearing from frame. Something black was oozing from the cracked tooth. At first, it looked like a viscous, bubbling liquid. But then it stretched itself out from a wide, black puddle to a thin, struggling line. Something that looked like a black leech was climbing out of the tooth. It bobbed cautiously, probing the world outside of the tooth. Several voices in the audience watching screamed. Somebody audibly retched. On the video, Polly's voice, distant as if coming from the other end of the room, could be heard stammering,
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
The thick Indian accent behind the camera simply asked,
What is that?
The video ended. Instead of letting the projection linger on the last frame, like with other videos, Polly advanced the projection to a blank white screen.
I do apologise for how upsetting that video can be,
Polly said. She held her hands together like a schoolgirl to make sure the audience saw her sincerity.
Please, if you feel you need to get some air, you won't be interrupting.
The doors in and out of the auditorium were already swinging open as some of the attendees were leaving.
But,
Polly went on to say,
while distressing, that video is very significant. It is the first known recording of the Lucurian limeworm, a newly identified species first discovered by me. This video is where all of the mysteries in my talk are solved. That slimy little black worm creeping out of Lucas's tooth is the answer to his hollow teeth, the cause of the constant noise he heard, and why they call it the Lake of Insanity. The Lucurian limeworm requires soft, calcium-rich deposits to complete its life cycle. Normally, it finds all the calcium it needs in the gypsum that is abundant in the lake bed. It lives there happily, thrives, and then disperses its eggs throughout the water to repeat the cycle again. When a foreign body comes into the water, like a goat looking to drink, or an English Instagram influencer going for a swim, that cycle is interrupted. The worm's eggs, so small they're invisible to the naked eye, can find their way into every crevice of the body, under fingernails, between hairs, and even into the gums. A worm egg lucky enough to find itself tucked into the periodontium then hatches and is immediately drawn to the calcium-rich dentine beneath the tooth enamel. The hole the worm bored into the enamel was so minuscule, we didn't even notice it on our first examination of Lucas's teeth. We don't know how many eggs got into Lucas's mouth. It could have been 100 all at once, or it could have been 1 or 2 that stayed in his teeth, living and reproducing until there was at least one worm inside every tooth in his head. I'm sure you've put this together already, and yes, the mysterious noise Lucas could hear was the sound of his teeth being eaten from the inside out.
The room was silent. It was uncomfortable. Polly beamed at the crowd to put them at ease.
Now, I don't want everyone to start panicking that you're going to have to learn a new decontamination procedure to deal with worms coming out of your patient's molars.
The crowd laughed, and the tension melted away. Polly nearly laughed out loud. It almost didn't matter what she said for the last 2 minutes of her talk. She already knew she'd given the most memorable speech of the conference. Probably the most memorable for the next 3 years' worth of conferences. That night, drinking endless glasses of wine in the conference centre bar, Polly laughed. She laughed every time someone offered to buy her next drink. She laughed at every single comment on her talk, whether it was funny or not. There was nothing she could do but laugh. Most dentists couldn't dream of making a mark on the industry in their whole careers like she just had in half an hour. Polly even laughed when her associate Raj Breet approached her from behind and laid a hand on her shoulder. She turned to face him, beaming like she had ever since she left the stage. But when Polly saw Raj Breet's face, his furrowed brow and wide, panicked eyes, her giddy fire started to dwindle. "Raj?" she asked. "What's happening?" Raj Breet fixed his eyes on hers. "You're going to need your phone," he told her. Polly didn't ask any other questions. She just moved away to find the table where she'd left her bag. As she went to the bag, Polly started to become aware of the conversations around her. The bar was steadily filling with shocked whispers. While she undid the clasps on her bag, those whispers began to give way to gasps. By the time Polly's phone was in her hand, Raj Breet was standing at her side. Polly swiped to unlock her phone, and Raj Breet pointed at her home screen. "Open Instagram," he told her. Polly opened the app and scanned her feed to try and see what was happening. In the top of the screen, a notification told Polly that Lucas was live. She glanced at Raj Breet. He nodded and gestured to her to open the live feed. When the live feed started, a horrid, wet, cracking sound burst out of her phone's speaker. The screen was a blur at first. Polly realised there was an arm in the way, obscuring what was happening. The chat was a constant stream of comments, coming and going in a flash. Polly could only make out a few words of each one before it was replaced by another. In the seconds she watched, multiple comments flashed by saying, "I've called the police. An ambulance is coming. Stop. You have to stop." Eventually, the arm in front of the camera moved, and Polly saw Lucas. He was holding a long, flat-head screwdriver with both hands. The steel head was buried between his top gums and his new porcelain bridgework. Polly stifled a sob with her hand. Blood was pouring from Lucas's mouth, flowing like a waterfall down his chin. Using the screwdriver like a crowbar, Lucas pried his new teeth out of his head. Polly could hear the sound of bones splintering as the titanium screws holding the teeth in were slowly pulled out of his upper jaw. One of his molars shattered from the stress. Polly dropped her phone. She looked up at Raj Breet. "Raj, what's happening?" she asked again. Raj Breet swallowed. "He said the noise didn't go away." Polly looked around the bar. Suddenly she realised how many people were staring at her. It was certain that no one would ever forget her now.